welcome to my second tutorial. Today I'm going to be taking you through the GetMove method. In the previous tutorial we discussed the main method, we discussed the game board and how we were going to be storing counters placed in the game. We discussed the constructor a little bit. We talked about how the player, the person who's going first, was determined in the set player method. We discussed the game state, or sort of the game loop, this while loop here, and how that was going to contain all of the game code and make sure that the game kept on running. And then we discussed the getters and setters for the game board global variable and why those were important, and that was done right here. So we're now on to line 18 here, and it's at this point that the user is actually going to interact with the program. Everything done previously has all been behind the scenes. You know, it's done so quickly that you don't even notice. The computer just whips through that no problem. But it's at this method that the user is going to get a prompt, things are going to slow down, and the user is actually going to start playing the game. So if I take you down to the GetMove method, first of all, you'll notice it has a return type of integer. So the reason for that is this method, the purposes of it is to get input from the user, to determine where they will be making a move on the board. Once we've done that, that value will be saved to this variable here and it will be returned to the constructor. And the reason that it's being passed in this way is so that the access is controlled. So this method here is private, and that means that it can only be accessed within this class. And that's so that, you know, you can't invoke this method at the wrong time. So you can't make, you can't have two goes in a row, or you can't alter this move variable in such a way that it can be, people do all sorts of stuff. So the best way is to limit access. The only way that a move is defined is within this method, within this class, and that's the only way to do it. There's no other functionality that allows another class to generate a move on behalf of the player, and that just keeps things nice and simple, and it just is, it's a good practice. So the next thing you notice is this counter variable. This isn't particularly needed, it's not game changing, it's just for the aesthetic. So if you remember in the last tutorial, I said that if counter was equal to 1, that meant it was player 1, and if counter equal to 2, that means it's player 2. Fairly self-explanatory. So in this case, all we want to do is we want to tell the user whose turn it is to make a move, and that's why we've got this counter variable here. Moving on, we create a scanner object from the Java libraries. What this is going to do is there's a new variable now called scanner, and it is going to invoke the, I don't know, presumably it's just, I don't know how this class works, this is a Java library thing, but we're passing system.in as the input stream to the scanner. So what that means is that anything that's typed into the console by us, or by the user, sorry, will be picked up and saved to this variable in some way. So like I say, it's quite complicated. I just know how to use it for these specific purposes. So if you want to do the same thing that I'm trying to do, which in this case is read input from a line in the console as the user writes it, that's kind of what this is doing. There's loads of other things you can do with the scanner, but this is the one that I'm using. Actually, tell a lie, there is another example I can think of. I've used this for files. So if I have a file that I'm reading from, I can type in the file as a variable rather than system.in, and it will take input from the file. Basically, the parameter you're giving is the input source. That's the best way I can think of it. What other inputs it can take, I don't know. Okay, and now this is the first interaction the user is going to get. And what it's going to do is it's going to say, if it's player 1 or 2, depending on what counter equals. It's their turn. Please enter a column value between 0 and 6. So make your move, basically. This next line is then going to be actually receiving that input. So until the user types into the console and hits enter, the program is just going to pause. It's going to be paused on this line. And this line, it's within the scanner functionality, but this variable will be waiting to be, this method, sorry, will be waiting for a valid stream of input to be received. And what that means is the user's typed into the console, they've hit enter, and then from there the program's going to progress. Again, how that's all handled, don't know. It's part of the functionality. I'm pretty sure there is documentation online for the Java libraries. I think they're open source, so you can have a look at that if you want. I just know that it does what I want, so I just don't ask any questions. One thing that is important though about this variable is that the output for it is string. So scanner.next is the console input for a specific line. So the user hits enter, that is the scanner.next, that's what it will be saved within that method call. So in order to save that to a variable, I would need to put string. I can't save it to an integer. That's why I'm having to, I want to use the word encapsulate. Basically, in simple terms, what I'm doing is I'm converting the string output to an integer. And from there, I'm saving that integer to move. So just to demonstrate what I was previously saying, if I do string input equals scanner.next, watch this not work. Yeah, that's totally valid because scanner is, well, presumably this will have a return type of string. If I change that to int, however, yeah, this will break because they are incompatible. This is a string and this is an integer. So that's why I'm having to encapsulate it with the integer that passes in. And this is, again, another standard technique. So if you ever want to convert a string to a number, this is how you do it. You put your string within the parameter, you call the parseInt method of the integer object from the standard libraries, and then you just save that variable like I have, save that value to a variable of your choice. One thing that is wrong with this code, and I noticed this when I was trying to record this earlier, and I spent like half an hour waffling on, so I thought I'd re-record, try and trim it down a bit. This method assumes, this whole block of code assumes that the user is going to enter a number. There's nothing to say that the user isn't going to be a smart ass or whatever and try and enter a word. So to kind of deal with that, what we're going to do is we're going to put in a try catch statement. Now, the reason for that, for doing that, and not an if statement like I have here. So this if statement is going to validate that the integer is within a certain range. The difference between validating if it's in a certain range and validating, well, not validating, but catching if a string has been entered, the difference between that is the fact that if a string is entered, if a word is entered, something that can't be converted to numerical characters, that's going to cause errors within the program. So if this, I believe, if this value is, say, hello, I don't think this method will work. And as a result, it's going to return an exception, and that's going to break the program. However, if this value is 9, this method is going to work, and that's why we need different validation, because this won't spit out an exception. 9 is a perfectly valid string that can be converted into an integer. That's absolutely fine. However, hello or goodbye or whatever, that can't be converted to an integer. So in the event that they do pass a word, we're going to set that any exception is going to be caught here. So whatever it happens to be. And all we're going to do is we're going to return 10. And I'll explain that in a minute. So Um, moving on, they haven't entered. Okay, so just pretend they haven't entered a string. Sorry, a word. They've just entered a number. They've entered 9. If they enter 9, 9 is greater than 6. Therefore, 10 will be returned. And the reason that 10 will be returned is because 10 is not a valid column number. And it's something that I can clearly distinguish within my code. If move equals 10, that means that an error has occurred. Hence why I've put return 10 down in my catch statement. So the program doesn't need to know the constructor where this is being executed doesn't need to know if the column is too high or too low. So, a user could enter a value of -5. Again, that will convert to an integer just fine. However, it's not a valid column number. But for the constructor's purposes, it does not matter if the user entered a column that doesn't exist, or if they entered a word, or they sent a photo, or I don't know, it's something crazy. It just doesn't matter what they do. They did it wrong. And it will know that they did it wrong by returning 10. If they don't return 10, then by default, I feel like I've foolproofed this. Again, this could be a weakness. I could have forgotten a number. This statement could have been configured incorrectly. I'm pretty sure it hasn't been though. This statement will return a value between 0 and 6. Since 0 and 6 are the only values that will meet this condition and avoid this catch statement as well. So in theory, this method is either going to return a valid column number between 0 and 6, or it's going to return 10. If it returns 10, that's the default error code. It's an error code, basically. Move equals 10, oh, you've had an error. In the event that we do have an error, there is this if statement. And all this if statement is going to do is it's going to say that it's not a valid column number. Fairly simple. It's going to skip all of this. This is the rest of the game execution. You might be able to check win condition, that kind of thing, get row, all that stuff is all you need for the rest of the game. Certainly all I need for the rest of the game. All of this is just going to be skipped, and what that means is it's just going to go back up to this while loop. And since this boolean will remain true, we haven't altered that at all. It's basically just going to go straight back, and it's going to hit GetMove again. No changes will have been made. There's no differences at all, and it's just going to do that until you enter a valid number. And that's how it's set up. So I hope you've enjoyed. I hope it's all made sense, and I'll see you for the next one.